Creating brush patterns is so much fun, and I'm going to show you how to create pattern brushes that you can save off in a set in pretty short time. So the very first thing, like always when making a brush, is it's good to start out with an image that you've adjusted so that it's mostly black and white, remembering that black will be solid when you paint and lighter areas will be more transparent. I have this file I'm using. It started out as a grayscale file, but I wanted to use some color, so I've changed it under my image mode to RGB color. I knew it was grayscale because the mode is listed up here in the tab in the parentheses. So first off, let's grab the rectangular marquee tool, make sure your feather is set to 0, and then click and drag around one of these shapes to begin making a pattern brush. I'm going to start with our very basic circle, and then I will define it by going to Edit, Define Brush Preset, and New Circle. Now I need to set up some layers I can try stuff out on and grab my brush tool. So I'm deselecting, I'm going to make a new layer and fill it with white. I'm going to do that by hitting D to get my default colors, X to switch them, and then Option Delete to fill that layer. New layer to paint on. That's going to be my setup. And now I'm going to hit D to get my black back as my default color. You can do that with however many different tools you need to achieve that. Alright, so I have my brush tool, and I need to come down to the very bottom where I've just made my new brush and click on it, and then grab your brush panel, and here's what we're looking at very first. Now, you might actually have settings already checked in here. A good thing to do when you start making brushes is to come up to the little drop down and choose Clear Brush Controls. And if you click on that, then it will get rid of anything that might already be selected. First thing I almost always do with a pattern brush is change up the spacing. Make it bigger so that you can see each stamp of that brush tip. And here is our most basic pattern brush already. You can change the size if you'd like it to be a little smaller. And then if you click and drag, you've got a pattern. This is a dotted pattern. You can change the size of your brush using your left and right bracket keys, or a couple other short ways, but we'll go with the bracket keys for now, which is kind of fun. Make the brush size at this point what you want it to be saved as. Now if I click and hold Option and Control at the same time, so I'm clicking and dragging, I can change the size of this circle, and it's listed right here as the diameter, and I can make this as big as the original tip, which is over here, 320 pixels. You don't want to go bigger than that because then it will become pixelated. So that will be the size that the brush gets saved at. Let's save this brush, go to the top right corner and click that drop down and choose New Brush Preset. And there it is. So that's one thing. Let's hide these couple of layers, grab our selection tool and choose something else to do another pattern. So I'm going to choose these feet, and then again go to Edit and choose Define Brush Preset. You'll notice maybe that I'm not actually on that layer. Whenever you define a brush preset, it just looks at everything it can see, so you don't actually have to switch layers. I'm just turning the layers on and off so that I can see that bottom one. And then deselect. Grab your brush tool, and down in your brush presets at the bottom, click on the one that was just made. We want to make a walking barefoot pattern, and this obviously isn't going to do the job. So first off, it's pointing in the wrong direction. To change the angle, come up here to this little round circle and grab it and rotate it until it's the right angle. And you can see it's a little hard to tell if I've hit the right angle or not, so I'm going to increase my spacing until this looks about right. Again, I've got a color I can paint with, and for now I'm going to make this smaller by hitting my bracket key while I'm testing things out, and then I'll probably make it bigger again by the time I save my brush. So if I click and drag when I'm going left to right, it looks pretty close to what I want, but if I start looping back around, it doesn't quite work out. I want it to follow my brush. I don't want it to look like it's walking backwards. So I'm hitting Command Z to undo that. To make the shape of the brush follow your cursor, you need to go and click on the word Shape Dynamics and change the angle setting control to direction. And now if I click and drag and loop back around, those will follow my brush. So that's a very useful thing to do. I'm going to click on Brush Tip Shape to check out the size of that original tip. That original tip is about 1,000 pixels. That's pretty darn big. I probably don't want it to be that big for the brush I'm saving, so I'm increasing the size to about 500 pixels. Maybe even a little more than that. Let's go for about 700-ish. And then I'm going to save it by coming up here to the top drop down and choosing New Brush Preset. And there's the feet, which is great. So here's where the fun part comes in, that we could make a whole bunches in really short order. Turn off those top two layers so you can see the bottom layer, and let's look at these and see which ones follow the rules of this brush that I've already set up. So the foot brush is turned, but we can change that. The main thing is that it's following the angle of the brush and it's spaced out. And if we do a dashed line with this shape, that would be the same, or maybe like a cross stitch or a single stitch. And the chain link would also be the same. So to make these quickly, I'm just going to select those and go to Edit Menu and choose Define Brush Preset. And then the next one. And then the next one. And then the next one. Alright, so deselect, turn your layers back on, and then grab your brush tool and open your brush panel again. I'm going to click on the first one, and you'll notice that these settings out here changed, but these settings didn't. So if I increase the spacing on this brush, all of a sudden it becomes a pattern brush, which is great. That's what I want. This is a huge pattern brush though, so I probably don't want it that big. I'm going to adjust the size with my bracket keys until it's closer to how I think I'm going to use it most of the time. That's a lot better. So then save your brush and click on the next shape, and again these stay the same and these change. So pretty much all of these we're just going to have to increase the spacing on, and then save the New Brush Preset. Same with this one. It's like the same story over and over again. Now this was a good example of using a really big tip selection when I'm making this. I can't actually increase my spacing any more than it already is. So if I wanted a bigger area between those two, I would actually need to go and save a smaller brush preset that when I was defining my brush. But this one does work. If I make it smaller, it'll work even better if I'm going for kind of a stitch type look. There we go. New Brush Preset. Okay. Is that it? Oh, we got a cross stitch here, I think. Now this one's actually kind of fun just as it is, following the direction. So you could save that as a brush if you'd like. I'm going to increase the spacing on mine so it looks sort of like if you were using a sewing machine to do a cross stitch, and then size it to about where I want it. Alrighty. So now I've come to the point where I want to save these off as a brush set. I would go to my brush preset panel, click on the drop down and choose Preset Manager. And I like to look at mine in stroke thumbnail. You might like it as something else, but we want to see the stroke thumbnail and save just the ones that are programmed to a pattern. I don't really need it where it's just the tip shape that gets without any settings on it. So I'm going to click on one, hold down Command, and click on any of the others that I want to be part of this set. So there's my footprint, there's my dot. Okay, I think I've got all of them. And then say Save Set, and you'll save this set to wherever you're saving your files. It will put a .abr at the bottom, and then you can mail that to people. You can upload it online. There are actually folks out there that make extensive brush sets and sell them. The scrapbook industry is kind of a big one for that. Anyway, go out, find brushes, see how people have set up their settings, and learn. It's so much fun.